Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco. Sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
The British monarchy has reigned over the centuries, each with their own precious crown jewels. Not all the jewels have survived the passing of time, but the collection that exists today is priceless beyond compare. Worn by some of Britain's most powerful monarchs, the jewels belong to the state, yet despite their enchanting and mysterious beauty, their purpose is much more than mere glitz and glamour. They are the majestic symbols of British monarchy. They serve vital ceremonial functions at the coronation of sovereigns, the running of Parliament, and the perpetuation of monarchy. The crown jewels have witnessed some of the most significant turning points in British history. They are a living symbol and are associated with awesome legends and intriguing stories. They bear testament to Britain's enduring strength, having survived wars, revolution, and theft. Over the centuries, the crown jewels have been broken up and sold for coinage. They have been fought over, they have been sold to finance wars, and they were even lost. Yet for each coronation, these powerful symbols were needed to affirm the new monarch. Even Oliver Cromwell, who executed King Charles I and replaced the monarchy with the Commonwealth, eventually had his own crown. Without the crown jewels, much of the pageantry and ceremony for which Britain is so famed could not occur. Yet it is what the jewels symbolize that is ultimately more precious than the jewels themselves.
These are symbols of monarchy, and therefore they are to be worn and to be seen that they are symbols of monarchy.
The St. Edward's crown is placed on the sovereign's head by the Archbishop of Canterbury at the coronation service. It's only ever used for this purpose. At the very moment of crowning, the duly anointed sovereign is officially established as the monarch of the realm.
It goes back to the days of the last Saxon king, Edward the Confessor. That's what it's reputed to be, and we think that the bottom part belongs to the original Saxon diadem.
Centuries ago, the jewels for the St. Edward's crown were hired for each coronation. Since Queen Victoria had the crown set with gems in 1838, they have remained with the crown. The gold alone weighs 4 pounds and 15 ounces, symbolizing the heavy burden of kingship. Here, in 1937, Prince Charles's grandfather, King George VI, takes on that burden at his coronation. Following a tradition that developed in Tudor times, the heavy gold crown was placed over the sovereign's cap of estate, a custom born more of comfort than fashion. The coronation ceremony has taken place at Westminster Abbey for over 900 years. Whilst the processional route and regalia have changed over the years, the main elements have remained unchanged for centuries. In 1953, when Queen Elizabeth II greeted the crowds from the balcony of Buckingham Palace after the coronation ceremony, the new Queen upheld the ancient tradition of British monarchy and greeted her people wearing the imperial state crown. The sovereign wears the imperial state crown for the state opening of Parliament in the House of Lords, an ancient tradition that has been continued to the present day.
And the restoration of the independence and legitimate government of Kuwait.
It's been traditionally used throughout the centuries. The monarch has always opened Parliament wearing his regalia, and in the, shall we say, in the new time, 18th and 19th century, the monarch has used the imperial state crown. Since Victoria, the same crown in essence has been used. It's been modified, it's been renewed, but in essence the state crown has been the same for the last 150, 160 years.
The imperial state crown is the most outstanding crown in the collection. Tradition suggests that the sapphire at the heart of the Maltese cross at the top of the crown came from the ring of Edward the Confessor.
Personally, I find that one of the most impressive pieces. It's a very, very ancient piece. It was actually removed from the ring of Edward the Confessor when his body was reinterred by Henry II in the 12th century. It's just incredible to think of this sapphire has seen so much in its history.
The present imperial state crown was made in 1937 for the coronation of King George VI. The crown comprises historic gems, priceless jewels, and 2,800 diamonds. Cut from the celebrated Cullinan diamond, the second star of Africa adorns the front of the crown. Weighing 314 carats, it's the world's second largest premier cut diamond. The large Stuart sapphire used to be in the front of the crown, but today it's placed at the rear. It originates from King Alexander of Scotland's coronation crown of 1214. A new crown was made for the coronation of Queen Victoria in 1838, when she succeeded her uncle, King William IV, to the throne. The crown was set in stones passed down from her ancestors, including the Black Prince's ruby and many superb pearls, rubies, emeralds, and fine sapphires. As she grew older, the weight of the imperial state crown became too heavy, so at her own expense she ordered a new smaller state crown to be made by Garrard's, the crown jewellers. It weighed just 4 ounces and sat neatly on the top of her head.
Queen Victoria ruled for an awful long time, and as she became older and slightly frailer, the state crown became too heavy. So she commissioned the crown jeweller of the day to make her a new crown, and she declared it to be a state crown, which is that wonderful little diamond crown we now have in the collection at the Tower of London, the small crown of Queen Victoria.
The diamond, called the first star of Africa, is the largest top-quality cut diamond in the world. It's the focal point of the royal sceptre with cross, which the sovereign traditionally holds in the right hand during the coronation ceremony. It was cut from the Cullinan diamond, which in its original form was the largest rough diamond stone ever seen by man. It was unearthed in South Africa in 1905. The Transvaal government purchased the Cullinan and presented it to King Edward VII to honour his 66th birthday.
The Cullinan diamond is an amazing story. It was found in 1905 by the manager of the mine, who saw it walking his dog in the evening after the mine was finished working. And then he saw, as he was approaching the entrance to the mine, he saw something glinting in the side walls in the evening sun. So he poked his walking stick towards it, and out fell this amazing diamond. Apparently he then took it and ran into the owner's office, screaming and yelling that he'd found this amazing diamond. And Mr. Cullinan, apparently a very cool Englishman, said that either this is the largest diamond we've ever found or you're fired.
The uncut Cullinan weighed 3,106 carats. The first steel blade that struck it broke in 2. Eventually it was cut into 9 major stones, 6 large brilliants and 96 chips. The distinguished jeweller Joseph Asher was assigned the momentous task of dividing the Cullinan. His subsequent success was rewarded with a gift of the 6 brilliants and the 96 chips.
During the cutting of it, it was given and entrusted to Joseph Asher of Amsterdam, who was then probably the best diamond cutter in the world, to cut it into several large stones and then smaller ones. And he studied the stone for 3-4 months. And before he decided to cut it, of course, he invited all the assembled dignitaries, the Dutch royal family, the English royal family, and various others. And then he struck the first blow. And of course, if he misjudged, it would have just shattered like a car windscreen. But as it didn't, it fell perfectly in 2 pieces. And apparently he fainted after that.
Why is the first star of Africa such an important part of the crown jewels?
It was part of the crown jewels because it was gifted to the nation by the government of Transvaal. It was found in 1905, cut up in 1907, and added after that to the crown jewels as the best place for it to be. As a gift to the nation, it has to be shown to be seen somewhere. And so it was decided to put in the scepter of the crown jewels.
The first Star of Africa is the most valuable gemstone in the crown jewels. Set in the head of the scepter with a cross, which symbolises the sovereign's temporal power under the cross, it's held by the sovereign during the crowning stage of the coronation service. The coronation ceremony contains many resplendent and spiritual artefacts. Some are ancient and some are more recent, yet they all serve symbolic purposes, and through them the sovereign swears to serve the nation and uphold the Christian religion. The three swords of justice are a prime example of this. They are known as the swords of temporal justice, spiritual justice and mercy, historically known as Kurtana. Kurtana has a broken blade, which is attributed to the legend of Ogier the Dane, who was about to kill the son of the Emperor Charlemagne in retaliation for the killing of his own son. Suddenly, the angel of mercy appeared and declared, "Mercy is better than revenge," causing Ogier to turn his sword aside, breaking it upon a rock. Today, the symbolism remains the same, that mercy should temper royal justice. The swords were made for the restoration of the monarchy in 1661, using older blades that escaped Oliver Cromwell's purge. The two-handed sword of state was first used at the coronation of King James II in 1685 and symbolises the monarch's royal authority. The symbolism of St. Edward's staff, which rests on the altar throughout the coronation ceremony, remains a mystery. Using the golden eagle known as the ampulla and the silver-gilt anointing spoon, the Archbishop anoints the sovereign during the most spiritual part of the coronation service. The anointing service is a sacred mystery shielded from media and public alike. Whilst the ampulla dates back to the 14th century, the anointing spoon is thought to be the one used at the coronation of King John in 1199.
Anyone can put a crown on, but just wearing a crown on the head doesn't make them a monarch. What does make them the monarch is that relationship between the monarch and God, this spiritual moment. And as is traditional, the ceremonial part is taken from the Bible, from the anointing by Zadok the priest of King David. And then King David was crowned as the king. And that is carried through in the Liber Regalis, which is the ritual of coronation. And the sovereign is anointed. The holy oil is contained in a golden bird, and this is poured by the Archbishop into a spoon. The monarch sits on the throne underneath the canopy held by four Knights of the Garter, away from the public gaze. And the Archbishop dips his fingers into the holy oil and anoints the Queen on the head, the breast, and both hands. And that is the spiritual part. The coronation, the crown, is actually the outward symbol of monarchy.
The golden spurs made for Charles II are then presented to the monarch. They symbolise chivalry. The jewelled sword of state, the most valuable sword in the world, is presented next. The bracelets, known as armills, are 22-carat gold with Tudor rose clasps. They were made for Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953 and were a gift from the Commonwealth nations. The monarch is then presented with the sovereign's orb. It's a hollow sphere of gold encircled with rubies, pearls, sapphires and emeralds within diamond clusters. Representing the precedents of Christianity all over the world, it's an important symbol for the British monarch, who also serves as the head of the Anglican Church and defender of the faith. The second orb was created for Queen Mary II in 1689 for her joint sovereignty with King William of Orange. Whilst this orb is no longer used for coronations, both orbs adorned Queen Victoria's coffin in 1901.
William and Mary's coronation was quite unique because mainly the lady is crowned as the Queen Consort, in other words, the wife of the king. The king is the ruler. But for William and Mary, this was very unusual. Both of them were crowned as joint sovereigns. Both had equal rights. If one was not present, the other one had the full authority. But it did cause another problem, and that was there was only one set of regalia and crown jewels for the coronation ceremony. So a second set had to be made. And the sceptre in the crown jewels today, one of the sceptres is still from that period. It is the original sceptre that was held by Mary at her coronation.
The sovereign's ring, also known as the wedding ring of England, is then placed on the fourth finger of the monarch's right hand. It was made for the coronation of William IV in 1831. The sovereign's sceptre with the dove was made for Charles II and represents equity and mercy. This crown was originally created in 1685 for Mary of Modena, the Catholic consort of King James II.
The reign of James II was rather difficult. His wife was a Catholic, and for a Protestant ruler that caused a lot of difficulties with the populace. However, for her coronation, she had a new set of crown jewels made. They were magnificent pieces, but very small. The tradition at the time was to wear wigs, and to wear a large crown on a large wig was just over the top, so they had to make very, very small crowns to look elegant.
Mary II adopted it as her state crown in 1727 and had it set with the Black Prince's ruby. During the 18th century, the crown was remodelled and once again became the crown of the Queen Consort. The diamond diadem which accompanies it is today set with crystals and pearls.
Every shape and form of the crown has a symbolic meaning. For example, if it dips down in the top, then that symbolises that it's a crown of coronation of a monarch. If it's straight across or slightly tipped up, then that's the symbol of crown of state. Each crown needs to contain crosses, sort of crosses paty, which symbolise the Christian position of the monarch, and also fleur-de-lis, which are traditional. But it is very much controlled, the form and shape of every single piece, and to try and design a crown that is unique and different from all the others in history, and yet still combine these important forms and shapes which are from which have either allegorical meaning or symbolic meanings of such. It must be very, very difficult to make something new and original.
Historically, crowns have always been a lot more enjoyable to look at than they have been to wear.
I think it's very uncomfortable. I think that's probably the worst thing. From our experience, crowns are not light things. For example, the crown of coronation weighs 5 pounds of gold weight alone, and with the weight of the gems, that's a hefty thing to have to wear at coronation for quite a few hours.
The Tower of London has been the home of the crown jewels for more than 600 years. Some of the jewels date back as far as the 11th century. Whilst many perished under Oliver Cromwell, a few survived and resurfaced in King Charles II's restoration regalia. Nowadays, the security at the tower is impenetrable, primarily to protect the priceless jewels from thieves. Yet in the past, security was surprisingly lax and access to the jewels a lot more open. In 1671, during the reign of Charles II, the chief warder of the tower, Talbot Edwards, suffered at the hands of a band of brigands led by an opportunist called Colonel Blood, who hatched an audacious plot to steal the jewels.
He turned up at the tower dressed as a priest, and he was accompanied by 2 of his colleagues. And when the jewel cages were opened up, poor old Talbot Edwards was hit over the head, and Colonel Blood and his 2 accomplices stole the jewels and off they ran.
The crown I put under my cloak, and Bob Parrott, one of my gang, put the orb in his breeches. A foul and noisome place that for the orb, sir, and he dropped it and it bent somewhat.
Fortunately for us, and unfortunately for them, the son of Talbot Edwards had just returned from the wars on the continent, and as the thieves entered onto the wharf, the son saw them and had them arrested, and they were brought back into the tower and placed before the king.
To have robbed the king and the kingdom of the jewels that belong to it, it is like trampling upon the national flag. It is an insult. It would destroy the morale and the sense of self-being of any nation, sir, I believe.
Strangely enough, they weren't punished. Colonel Blood was actually given a gratuity and large estates in Ireland, which leads one to think why.
For hundreds of years, royal maces were close protection weapons carried by the king's sergeant-at-arms. Today their function is ceremonial, yet the symbolism remains powerful, for without the mace being present in the house, Parliament cannot begin a session.
There are 13 maces altogether in the Royal Collection at the Tower. There's always one mace at Houses of Parliament, and they are the symbol of monarchy, and without the monarch being present by being represented through this mace, Parliament cannot transact any business.
In 1821, Queen Victoria's uncle, King George IV, had a diadem made for his coronation and decorated with shamrocks, thistles and roses set with diamonds.
George IV's coronation, a new crown was made, and he was under strict orders from Parliament what he could have in his crown. So he then decided that he would have flower bouquets between the Maltese crosses. The flower bouquets represent England, Scotland and Ireland. Originally, it would have been set with semi-precious stones that would have been hired from the jewellers for the coronation, because in those days they couldn't afford to have crowns and diadems set with real stones and keep them. So the jewellers came in and they were, all the jewels were hired and sent back afterwards. If the jewels were left in the crowns, the sovereign would have pawned them, hocked them to pay gambling debts or, as turned out, mistresses in those days.
The diadem has been worn and enjoyed by successive monarchs and has proved to be a popular item, particularly with the royal ladies. At the annual state opening of Parliament, the Queen arrives wearing the George IV diadem.
She wears it leaving Buckingham Palace, travelling in the coach to the House of Lords. She then walks up the grand staircase into the robing room where that crown, the diadem, is removed, and she then puts on the more important imperial state crown.
The circumstances of a ceremony can often mean that conventions have to be altered, as with the unusual instance of the coronation of King Edward VII.
It starts really from the crowning itself, because as he was still very unwell from his operation, he was actually crowned with a break from precedence with the state crown instead of the St Edward's crown. And shortly after the crowning ceremony, the Archbishop tripped on the steps and rolled down the steps, and Edward sort of leapt up and helped him back up the stairs. So it was quite an eventful coronation all round.
In 1911, King George V and Queen Mary were crowned Emperor and Empress of India in a lavish ceremony in Delhi called the Delhi Durbar. Queen Mary was showered with gifts of Indian jewels, which she combined with other jewels to create a parure worth £2 million at today's prices. As the crown jewels cannot leave the shores of England, a new crown known as the British Imperial Crown of India was made for the ceremony. It contained a fabulous array of remarkably fine emeralds sent from India, as well as sapphires, rubies, and over 6,000 diamonds.
The imperial crown was created specially for the Delhi Durbar. In 1911, George V was the first and only British monarch that actually was crowned Emperor of India in November 1911. And it was just the most amazing event of the day. And so therefore a new crown had to be made, because the crowns of England may never leave the shore of this country by Act of Parliament. So therefore we have a new crown.
The Indians provided all the diamonds, the rubies, the sapphires, and sent them to England. And here in England, a new crown was made for the Durbar, which was taken over to India. Now, the Durbar itself is a magnificent celebration. Thousands and thousands of Indians, princes, maharajas, all came to this magnificent area like a giant field. And in the center of this was this dais. And there sat the Emperor and Empress of India, resplendent in their robes and their crown jewels. And the maharajas and everyone came up and paid their tributes at this magnificent, unprecedented ceremony. It was just a stunning, staggering event and quite unique. George V was, in fact, the only British monarch ever to go and be crowned as Emperor of India.
Each successive queen consort has a new crown created. Since Queen Victoria's reign, it's always contained the legendary Indian diamond, the Koh-i-Noor. For the coronation in 1902 of King Edward VII, his consort, Queen Alexandra, had the Koh-i-Noor set in her new crown, as well as 3,688 other diamonds. Queen Alexandra's crown is on display today, yet without the beautiful Indian diamond that once graced its frame. The Koh-i-Noor, which means mountain of light, has a long and dramatic history surrounding the male owners of the precious stone.
The diamond itself has a horrendous history of really murder, mayhem, and mystery, because it has throughout ages been sought after by various potentates, kings. Shah Jahan owned it, who built the Taj Mahal for his wife Mumtaz. Nadir Shah ransacked New Delhi and took it back to Persia. Then it became part of the Afghan royal family, where brother blinded brother so he wouldn't see it. So in folklore there's been this myth that every male owner comes to a sticky end. So therefore, just to be on the safe side, it has always been worn by women.
In 1937, Queen Elizabeth, later the Queen Mother, had her elegant new Queen Consort's crown made. Years later, in 2002, at her funeral, the crown was placed on the top of her coffin throughout the funeral procession and ceremony. The crown was made of platinum, set entirely with diamonds and the priceless Koh-i-Noor. But it is the legend of the Koh-i-Noor diamond which makes it so intriguing. The magic and mystery of the crown jewels increases with the passing of time. The crown jewels are ostensibly beautiful and priceless, yet their true value lies in their power to symbolise the authority and heritage of the British Crown and Parliament. While sovereigns change with time, the jewels remain solid and resplendent, thereby symbolising the enduring institution of monarchy. Today, these alluring jewels remain exclusive, whilst also drawing thousands of visitors to London every year. But it is not only the craftsmanship involved in their creation, nor the intrinsic value, fire or brilliance of the gems that is their true worth. It is the long line of British monarchs who have worn them, and the centuries of history, magic and mystery surrounding them that makes them truly beyond price.